So I was so impressed with some of the thinking that has been happening around characters and the thinking we're doing about our characters' turning points. Remember, we're looking for places where a character does or says something that isn't what we expect, or something that a character does that is different than what they've been doing or saying or feeling up to that point. That's a contrast or a contradiction. When we find those places, we want to stop, we want to notice them, and we want to note them by asking ourselves, why would a character act this way? Okay, many of you shared great comments and you made excellent inferences in the breakout room. Remember that an inference is an idea that you have about a text based on what you read and what you already know, and you back it up with text evidence. By answering the one question, why would the character act this way, we have been able to make some really good inferences about our character's thinking and our character's motivation. And as we keep reading, we're going to discover that these inferences might be supported by the rest of the story and by other characters' actions. And we might also find out which ones of these predictions or these inferences we're making might turn out to be inaccurate. But by noting and noticing these contrasts and contradictions, we're going to become better readers and more attentive to our readers. So let's keep reading. Again, as I read, when you find parts that you think are contrasts or contradictions, go ahead and make a mental note of them. Or if you still have those post-it notes and that spare paper or even that whiteboard that's near you, you may mark those things down. You'll want to come back to them at the end, as I'm going to ask you those two very important questions. What was the moment that your character changed? And why did the character change? So be mindful of that as I read the last section, or reread, I should say, excuse me. In another corner of the room, behind a screen, was a gas plate and an icebox. Mrs. Jones got up and went behind the screen. The woman did not watch the boy to see if he was going to run now, nor did she watch her purse when she left behind her on the daybed. But the boy took care to sit on the far side of the room where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner other eye, if she wanted to. He did not trust the woman, nor not to trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. Do you need something to go to the store, maybe get some milk or something? Excuse me, do you need somebody to go to the store, maybe to get some milk or something? The boy asked. Don't believe I do unless you want sweet milk yourself. I was going to make cocoa out of this canned milk I got here. That would be fine. She heated some lima beans and ham she had in the icebox, made the cocoa, and set the table. The woman did not ask the boy anything about where he lived or his folks or anything else that would embarrass him. Instead, as they ate, she told him about her job in the hotel beauty shop that stayed open late, what the work was like, and how all kinds of women came in and out, blondes, redheads, and Spanish. Then she cut him a half of her 10-cent cake. Eat some more, son. When they were finished eating, she got up and went to her pocketbook. Now, here, take this $10 and buy yourself some blue suede shoes. And next time, do not make the mistake of latching onto my pocketbook, nor nobody else's, because shoes come by devilish like that will burn your feet. I gotta get me my rest now, but I wish you would behave yourself, son, from here on in. She led him down the hall to the front door and opened it. Good night. Behave yourself, boy. The boy wanted to say something else other than thank you, ma'am, to Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones, but he couldn't do so as he turned at the Baron's stoop and looked back at the large woman in the door. He barely managed to say thank you before she shut the door, and he never saw her again. The end. Well, here we are at the end of the story, after rereading it a second time today, and my head is full of thoughts. The first thing I want you to do is to think back about the portion we just read, and think about a contrast and contradiction with either Roger or Mrs. Bates Washington Jones. And I want you to think about what was most interesting about what happened. How have those characters changed most at this last section of the story? I want you to think about that in your head for just a moment. Okay. Now, what is the question you want to ask yourself? So we notice that contrast and contradiction. I want you to think about what is the question that you ask yourself when you notice a character changing. That's right. I bet you got it in your head. Why did the character act that way? So I want you just to take another moment and think about why you think either Roger or Mrs. Bates Washington Jones has changed in the way they have at this last section of the text. Take a minute, as good readers do and good writers do. We think for just a moment before we start writing. Okay. Now we're going to end it here. And for our last activity today, I'm going to have you independently tell me, how did either Roger or Mrs. Bates Washington Jones change in this last section of the text? What was the contrast and contradiction that you noted? And then that all-important question, why did that character change? You're going to answer these last two pieces in a Flipgrid, and that will bring us to the end of class.